Hey, very good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Sean.
This is Alex.
And you're listening to Coaster Kings Radio. Today's episode, we're going out west, back to California, Vegas, Nevada.
One of our favorite regions.
Our somewhat home region.
Yeah.
So,
one of our homes.
Yeah, so a couple weeks ago, in late October, we did a little lightning trip to the West Coast. We mentioned it a little bit in the previous episode, the season opener for season 4. But yeah, what we did is we flew into LA, took a car, drove to Vegas, met up with my dad, did some stuff, and drove back, did Magic Mountain, and then obviously flew back to Florida. So it was a quick trip, but full of entertainment. So today we'll just kind of talk about that.
Yeah, it was a great visit all around, all of our Vegas stuff, all of the time at Magic Mountain. It was just hit the spot. Especially, we'd had a couple weeks of like more stressful trips. Of course, first world problems. Stressful trips to Dollywood and to Silver Dollar City. So
those actually after, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. Wait, I thought those were before.
I think we did. It may have been. No, we did. I think it did LA before, and then we did those two, and then we did France. So it was like week after week after week.
God, don't ask me about my concept of time. I just knew they were all right in together, and I kind of thought like we did Dollywood, and then, of course, I guess not.
Maybe you're right.
Wait, let me look, because I've got
maybe I'm
in
wrong.
my phone.
Maybe I'm
like in the order of which we did it. No, we definitely did California and Vegas after Silver Dollar City.
Oh my God, we totally wow. In my head, it lived so much longer ago.
No, because I remember thinking like going to. When we took our flight, we took our morning direct flight to LA from Orlando, got our car. We went the night before. We went hella early.
Yeah, so I got off work early, so we took a 3 p.m. flight from Delta from Orlando to LA, which we got there around like a little before 6, so we got there with plenty of time.
And we got our car, went and had a great dinner, took pictures of Magic Mountain before going to Lazy Dog in Valencia, and it was already felt so much relaxing compared to our Herschend parks before our Herschend visits.
So yeah, okay, God, that's actually more recent than I thought. Yes, so we spent the night in Valencia because we used to live there. Stayed at the hotel we used to work at. Hung out with some people I knew from there, and then the next morning we left relatively early, and we drove through the Lancaster Palmdale area through to Victorville, and then
never done it. I can't think of a drive that's more beautiful and pleasant than that LA Vegas drive. Everything along it. There's so many fascinating landmarks. And of course,
especially if you come from like a place like Valencia, you have a little bit more local highways you got to take to get to the main road, to the main
starting
freeway.
in Valencia or like North LA even, and working your way to Vegas is super pleasant once you're already out of like the DTLA area, like the general like LA proper, which that's lovely in its own right too. But as far as what makes the LA Vegas drive special, you want to start in like the northernmost part of LA County and then work your way over.
So what we usually do is we get on the, I think it's the 15? God, don't quote me on this. I don't know why I'm forgetting. But in Victorville, usually. And that's where there's also a giant logistics airport in California's largest logistics airport, known for storing retired aircraft or aircraft that are going to be sold through to another party, or aircraft in this case during the pandemic that are stored there
temporarily
while flight numbers internationally are down. So we had driven by this place like a lot, and I had been to the Mojave logistics airport where they have aircraft stored as well. But this is one of the largest in the world, if not the largest. They have like over 500 aircraft there. So we actually decided to make a pit stop there, see how close we could get, what we could see. We got really close.
I had no idea we were actually able to get that close. It was like being out on the tarmac, like walking around.
Yeah, we got incredibly close to an A380 from
without
Qantas.
Trespassing.
Yeah, no. There's just a bunch of little office buildings and they're right on the tarmac.
We parked in like public parking areas accessible to anyone.
Yeah, or like just on public roads.
Walking right underneath these amazing commercial aircraft. So,
we saw some A350s. We saw pretty much any aircraft out there. Lots of retired MD-11s and DC-10s, so it was actually really enjoyable. It was a fun stop.
From airlines from all over the world. Every continent with a major airline was represented. Virgin Australia, China Southern, all kinds of European and North American airlines represented. As I mentioned in the last episode, a highlight for me was seeing all of the Delta 777s there. being white-tailed and waiting for...
Again, whitetailing is something else. But yes, having their logos painted over so they're no longer officially part of Delta.
I guess that's... Yeah, so there's whitetailing, which is like...
Aircraft that were ordered and manufactured for a certain airline, then the deal fell through, so they're manufactured but they don't have an airline to go to yet.
So then they get painted white.
So then, they're just white-tailed. And then there's obviously aircraft that are retired, which may be sold off or may be used for parts, but once the airline surrenders the aircraft, and generally speaking, they paint over the logo. Usually it's partially, so you can still see part of the logo.
You can see that it was clearly the Delta tail and stuff, but the paint was designed to obscure the logo. It was fascinating seeing those because we're driving by them and we're like, oh, we've flown on those, we've slept on those. One of those 777s we took to, wherever it is that we went, and it was really fascinating. It was new for me. It's not something I've ever really done before, but as someone who works with airplanes all the time, it was interesting seeing so many in that environment and being able to walk around and right up close to them and see some of them in various states of deconstruction. Or repair. I believe there was a Southwest
like a classic
737 that was like in pieces, and it was like
it was literally just a fuselage. It was missing the wings and the tail. It was funny.
It was neat, kind of looking at the aircraft in that way. And
I think the coolest thing is just seeing the sheer size of the operation and the sheer amount of aircraft parked. I mean, with the pandemic, there's easily over like way more than 500. It is just an ocean of planes, and just when you thought you saw them all, you like look in their distance, and there's another ocean of other aircraft.
As far as the eye can see, aircraft.
So that was really fun. That was a cool pit stop. We definitely spent like an hour and a half there. I think we were very enamored.
It's kind of like the halfway point to Vegas anyway. So like we stopped, we pulled off the road and went to Starbucks, and then looked at our aircraft, and then kind of casually meandered our way back onto the highway by way of.
Some local roads.
Some of the other local roads. There's some beautiful rock formations, like very, like Bryce Canyon-y, kind of like on a small scale type of rock formations, like the really pronounced and like worn and like rounded with like all these amazing shapes and stuff. And then of course that little dead neighborhood, the dead city that's
like a company town
blocked off. The old, the abandoned company town with the
right next to the.
All the
airport.
Idyllic little houses all lined up and being reclaimed slowly by nature. Just fascinating stuff, really.
But so we continued our journey on. We stopped at Eddie's World, which is like some new gas station. And God, what is the town?
Okay, so here's the thing.
So
I feel like that should be on. I have everything saved, and it usually geotags everything that I photograph in these kinds of settings. Let me just see here. So where do I say? Oh, here we are driving around Victorville. But yeah, Eddie World.
It's in Eurimo, that's what it is.
Eurimo, yeah.
Eurimo.
Eddie World is sort of like a Buc-ee's kind of thing, like a giant, colossal highway, like shopping and gasoline attraction.
But like an independent one.
But yeah, independent. And those sorts of things aren't very common in California, so I feel like Eddie World...
Well, it's like, they literally list themselves as like California's largest gas station. I mean, it's really not that large, guys.
Yeah, it's nothing
compared to
like
Buc-ee,
a typical Buc-ee's, but it's really unique for California, because I feel like moving to the South when I was a kid and seeing like the giant like truck stops and stuff, like travel centers of America, that kind of stuff was like really unusual for me, because in California I feel like gas stations are still like these tiny like 4-pump operations with like not even necessarily like a mini mart inside. They used to all just be like maybe a car wash or like a lube center and just gas, and that was it. But so we went in there. We stopped in both directions to get provisions. There was bathrooms, of course, a huge highlight.
Though on the way back, they were flooded, so they were closed.
Oh my God, it was.
But I guess that we came at the right time, because then like 10 minutes later they had fixed the plumbing issue. Just Eurimo things. So we made it to Vegas around noon. So we did pretty good, leaving LA around like 8 a.m.
Yeah. On our way, of course, we stopped and paid respects to the Prim Resorts, Prim, Nevada.
We drove around a little bit. Took a look at Desperado.
Not only is Desperado closed, of course, they do test it regularly, and we have, thanks to Brendan, one of our newest associates, we have some great photos of the ride testing. But not only is the coaster closed to the public, but the entire resort. The entire Buffalo Bills casino is closed. You can't even enter the parking lot right now. The Prim Valley Hotel is open, and there seems to be a decent amount of patronage there. But the area itself is definitely looking pretty bleak. You don't even want to stop there for gas because the gasoline is priced
way
price
overpriced.
hiked. It's like $6 a gallon there. When you pull off, it's a lot cheaper to wait until you make it to the outskirts of Vegas proper, if you're looking for gas. But it's still a fascinating little stop. You can get pretty solid views of the entire Desperado ride layout just from driving around on public roads and whatnot. So definitely always worth a stop for us, regardless of what kind of condition the ride might actually be in.
And then, so like I said, we got to Vegas around noon. We went to our hotel. We stayed at the Marriott Grand Chateau, which is right next to Planet Hollywood, right by City Center.
Great location.
Great location.
Really
it's literally like it's like a 2-minute walk to the strip.
2-minute walk from like our favorite little Vegas microcosm, which is the Aria City Center.
But like Cosmopolitan. Because like we went to Cosmopolitan quite a few times for like food and stuff, and it was great because it was literally like a 3 to 5 minute walk. Like it really wasn't terrible, just kind of depending on how fast you move. So it was great. So we got to our room. We got the penthouse like villa with
top floor,
2 bedrooms.
Only one with like it had like the vaulted like Parisian style windows.
Yeah.
That I thought were more just like an embellishment to enjoy from like the outside. But when you're in those rooms, it's actually kind of cool the way they're.
We had a great view of the strip, so it was nice.
Yeah, we could see
room.
Cosmopolitan from our bed, like just looking at it. Like the window was shaped just right, where you could see the entire forward tower of the
Boulevard Tower. Yeah.
A fun view to wake up to for sure.
So then we dropped off our bags. We still had about an hour before my dad was going to land because he was flying in from San Francisco. So we hit the New York coaster with the new Premier trains.
Yep, we got some White Claws and made our merry way over to New York to try out the new trains.
Now, New York, the new trains, obviously we'll get into that for a second, but I do want to mention it's gotten even pricier. So it's cheaper during the weekdays and during the weekday, like during the day hours. I would definitely say like if you're gonna ride, might as well ride a second time and then bring down that average cost.
Yeah, for sure.
But was it worth it? I would say so because we hadn't ridden in a while. We had tried riding it earlier this year, and we went there for like 2 days, like and individually flew out in between too. So we literally flew in for two different times just to try.
I was working,
and it was down.
You had lunch with your dad in Silicon Valley in between. Got some cheap flights
and flew back. And the next evening it still wasn't open. So that was unfortunate. So it was glad that we got back. The new Premier trains, they run fine. The legroom is always the issue in the back, and the shin guards are always annoying to get in and out. But overall, I would say. It ran well. Yeah. It just runs a little slow.
I would say a general overall improvement. I think a vast majority of people who are familiar with the New York coaster will find the new trains to be a huge improvement. We were in the minority of people who didn't really take issue with the old trains. I would say that the new trains, for me personally, have swapped old problems for some different problems. Any problems that you may have, any criticism you have of the SeaWorld Parks Entertainment Skyrocket 2s with their trains, with the comfort collars, and basically any criticisms you have of those are certainly present on this ride. But for I think the average rider, they would rather have these trains than the old Premier in the style of Togo, like Togo style Premier trains that were unique to the ride.
I will say that the lights were a nice touch. When you're like from a distance, you can see the lights in front of the trains. Kind of seeing the taxi run around.
Oh yeah, that was around a great choice.
That was fun. But overall, I will say if you've ridden it a couple times, go check it out. But I don't think when I'm in Vegas next time I'll spend the money for it.
Yeah,
again.
Considering we go to Vegas annually, it's not something that we feel like we need to do annually per se. But it's one of my favorite things about the ride is just its presence. So I feel like I can walk by there and look at it, take pictures of it, and enjoy it from the ground, and then maybe ride it every once in a while. Especially, like you said, with those new headlights that they've installed. That is a really popular trend with rolling stock on new coasters is light fixtures on the trains. It's fun to see Manhattan Express or New York coaster or Big Apple coaster jump on that bandwagon, especially since it is themed to a motor vehicle like a streetcar. So having working headlights is great. I think the old trains looked cooler. Just because they had such great embellishments with they
look more like taxis and not
taxi.
like sleeker trains.
Yeah, the new ones I think do a great job with giving them the taxi aesthetic on the otherwise very low-profile Skyrocket trains. But I think as far as the way they look, the old ones are still my favorite, the kind of vintage-style ones. The original Togo ones had, like, a modern taxi look to them, and in the 90s, modern taxis didn't really look that great, so those, I don't really miss the Togo trains that much. But now, all in all, I also feel like with the increased capacity, that's really a strong move with the trains, so...
Well, yeah, they do add 2 seats per train, which is nice.
Yeah.
So overall, we have had a good time, but we obviously did a lot more. So one of the highlights for us also was we did Meow Wolf Omega Mart
at Area
15, which is just across the freeway from kind of like Circus Strat area.
Area 15 is a great mixed use.
It's an entertainment space that has a bunch of different exhibits and experiences in there. So another one is the Van Gogh experience.
Yeah.
Which is really cool
for all of our Americans.
For your mispronouncing Americans.
Yeah, Van Gogh. Van Gogh is Dutch, for those of you who don't know.
Van Gogh is his name.
And American English does not pronounce Van Gogh's name correctly. It's Van Gogh.
Van Gogh, yes.
Van Gogh.
Anyway, not even. Okay, so it's really cool.
They also have a whiskey bar there.
There's several restaurants, cool, there's stores, there's shops. It's very much like, a high art, modern experience. You do have to have reservations. You can't just go into Area 51. You have 15, sorry. If you're standing outside and you don't have a reservation, you need to buy your tickets online. They have to wait in the standby line.
You have to have a reservation for one
of the
attractions.
Exactly. If you have a ticket to Meow Wolf on Omega Mart, then that includes admission to Area 15. And if you have a reservation, you will be let in. You don't have to stand by, for capacity reasons. So you just kind of bypass that and you walk straight inside, and then you go to Omega Mart, which is located on the left-hand side once you come inside, and you will just scan your tickets and enjoy the experience.
Omega Mart is definitely the anchor seat experience in Area 15, but there's a lot going on there. You could kill a whole day once you're inside of Area 15. I love that it's completely indoor. Yeah. So if
it's nice because Vegas, you're so used to the blaring sun, but it's a great thing to do during the day because it's controlled environment inside and it's completely dark. So there's lots of light. It's very artsy, very experimental. So what they do is they give you a little card when you come in. It's your employee card.
Yeah,
so
your employee
a couple
card
spoilers here and there.
Omega Mart is really it's such a high concept, unusual thing. It really defies categorization. Meow Wolf is an art and architecture and design troupe based in Santa Fe, New Mexico. The original Meow Wolf is in Santa Fe, and now there's Omega Mart here in Las Vegas, and there's also Divergent Station in Denver, Colorado, right in the Ewich Gardens Aquarium area of Denver. That's on our bucket list now because we're so happy with Omega Mart. But it is an interactive, it reminds me of a kid's science museum kind of thing, but for grown-ups.
Yeah, with an art approach. So the theme,
overarching story.
Obviously, the storefront theme is that you are at a really strange, one-off supermarket where everything you would see in a typical supermarket is twisted into either a nightmarish way or a really fantasy way, and it's all highly unique, and all the labels are 100% custom designed. So there's lots to look at, almost just a really fun pop art kind of situation.
I just love that.
But then you are also meant to be the employee.
Yeah.
So you get a little employee card, and this employee card unlocks things on the grocery side of things, but behind the whole grocery store there is actually a hidden vault, and there's a lots to experience, and there's lots to unlock, and there's a whole story about this almost upside down Stranger Things situation back there. And then there are slides, and there is little mini exhibits, and then there's computers that unlock information.
There's the offices, the brain of the operation for Omega Mart, and everything is yours to explore.
And everything connects in a story that you can literally spend a whole day there, because we spent 3 hours in there, and we didn't unlock we didn't unlock 1 out of 5 stories.
We
it's crazy.
Spent hours there, just captivated by the aesthetic, and didn't even. We scratched the surface on, what there is to do there. I look forward to going back.
And the price were reasonable. I think you paid, $45 a person?
Yeah, I thought so. For what it was, it's one of those, again, I feel marketing-wise for them, it's so hard for them to sell the experience to people
giving it away.
Without over-explaining what it does, but you just have to trust it. You go in there and drop the dollars.
The goodness is that the experience speaks for itself, and in a modern social media age, an experience this works a lot better because people go based on reviews, not based on pictures, not based on brochures. Yeah. So I think everyone hypes about it. It's wow, this is so crazy, and people will just go. That's what we went.
For as hard as it is
I did not know what was behind the story.
For something that was so hard to explain, I was well, I'm curious. And I know that people are crazy about it. Theme Park Review went as a media, and based on their experience, I was like, yeah, I would like to try this out. And it was marvelous. I just love the way that everything, like the storefront part of it, which is your liaison to the underbelly of Omega Mart, is, you know, everything seems normal on the surface. Like if you glance at it, it's meant to seem like something, but the more you look at it, the more bizarre it is. In fact, it's almost, there's ways in which that it's like deliberately not just mentally captivating, but like stomach turning. There is like I don't know what to call it, but there's just like, there's almost like a gross out factor, but it's like, it's thrilling. It reminds me of like a good episode.
Well, just in like a few areas.
It reminds me of like a good episode of Ren and Stimpy, but but come to life. I don't know. And
it's highly creative how they come up with it. I'm really impressed. The amount of details. There's just detail absolutely everywhere, and there's so many different aesthetics and themes, and yet it really works. It's all really tied together. I think a lot by like the use of light, but yeah, and everything is interactive. There's nothing. It's nothing that you really just stare at. Like everything you can touch and do things with.
If you love,
just really cool
theme parks, and if you're a fan of themed immersive areas inside of theme parks, this is for you.
Also, if you're a fan of bars, they have a bar inside of a secret bar, which we didn't realize we were on our way out.
Because yeah, we were kind of in the. But yeah, we already have a list of things that we do next time. If I lived in Vegas, I would be like, get me an annual pass for this thing. Like,
yeah, it's funny. I don't know if they have annual pass, but they definitely have Florida. They definitely have Nevada residents.
They have Nevada residence passes. So yeah, if
so.
you live in the Vegas area and you're hesitant, like, don't hesitate to check this place out. And if you're going to Vegas and looking to do something new and trendy and very social media,
and something that's perfect for doing a hot day.
And something that's great to do middle of the day in Vegas. You're waiting for things to cool down on the Strip. You've already done the pool at your hotel or like whatever. This is such a cool, unique asset to Las Vegas that just couldn't be more fascinating and trendy.
I mean, another cool thing to do during the day is the Strat, or Stratosphere as it used to be called.
Strat.
We went to during the day as well. The cool thing about that is, despite its kind of awful location on the far end of the Strip, it is close to downtown, which is nice. You can go to the Skypod for like about $20. Like, it's really not expensive, and then you can just purchase your rides either a la carte or do like all rides once or like unlimited. But honestly, you do not need to have the rides to have a good time, because despite the resort being a little dated, the lobby is fine, like the casino area is fine. The tower itself, when you enter the elevators, it seems a little old. When you get upstairs, it's nicely refurbished. The interior is really cool. There's a little there's a full service restaurant, there's wedding venues, all that kind of stuff up there. But there's also like a quick service restaurant, a gift store, a bar,
of course.
And then you can just enjoy the view. There's lots of interactive maps. And the cool way that Strat is set up is that the windows are tilted forward.
Yeah, they're
so
vaulted out.
When you look, you literally look straight down. It's no such thing as just looking out the window. It's flat and like, you know, vertical with you. It's leans forward, so you really get to look down directly, which is cool.
Honestly, some of the best like observation tower views I've ever seen. We love observation towers.
We have done some big observation towers around the world.
We've done some of the coolest in the world, and honestly, Vegas has a fabulous asset.
I feel like I should have gone to Strat earlier, because we've been to Vegas so many times, we never really venture over there.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I did. We'll definitely go back, because the indoor part, we want to see it at night. Your ticket's valid all day. It's in and out.
In and out privileges.
So if you like go in the morning, you have like, you know, a snack, and you just kind of enjoy the view during your day, you can come back a couple hours later and do the whole thing again at night, have a drink. So we're definitely going to do that.
It's worth going. Yeah, go hit it for lunch and then come back after the sun sets and go twice. And it is funny. The location of it is funny, because it is like the only like Vegas Strip casino that's like technically legally in Las Vegas proper,
and not in Paradise.
Yeah. But that side of the Strip is having a resurgence. We'll talk about it in a little bit, I guess. But we went to Resorts World, the new Resorts World hotel, which is on that end of the Strip, and
for those who don't know who Resort World is, they are a big Asian resort company.
Genting.
They have Genting, and it includes, if I'm not mistaken, Genting SkyWorlds, but it also includes Universal Singapore. It's actually owned and operated by Resorts World in Singapore. So
they own a lot of hotels in like Macau. They own lots of stuff in it. It's a Malaysia-based company. They have a lot of properties in Malaysia, Indonesia.
And it's very artsy, but there's definitely like a great Asian inspiration there. There's like an Asian street food court. That's like the main food court. There's lots of Asian pop art and pop culture spread throughout the casino. The aesthetic of the buildings is nearly Japanese Chinese. Like it's very, very, very nice. And then the hotels within that they operate are Hilton properties.
I'm just so impressed with just the overall aesthetic and like the modernness of it. In a market like Vegas, like you really have to push modern and you really have to push new and never seen before, because in Vegas, like if you do something that's relevant when you start planning it, it'll be passé by the time your casino opens. And some other casino will be providing an aesthetic that's even more modern and more futuristic and more fresh than your project. So I think, considering how long the Resorts World project remained in like developmental purgatory.
Well, I think it helps that they have such big names like Katy Perry, Luke Bryan,
yeah, they've got
Carrie Underwood, Celine Dion.
Yeah,
they're all performed there, so they got
moved.
a pretty good marketing thing going on.
And then their partnership with the Hilton brands, various Hilton, Crockfords, and
Conrad. The Conrad is their own, right? Conrad's their own brand.
I think. Well, did they own?
Didn't we research that, or was it Crockford? It was their own brand.
I think they own all three. I think Crockford's and wait, sorry,
no,
I already forgot it. Crockford's and
I believe Conrad is a brand from Hilton. See, I don't work for that company.
But yeah, so it's technically 3 hotels with 3 distinct hotel lobbies, 3 unique operations happening concurrently inside of the Resorts World complex. They have a beautiful casino floor. Again, like Sean said, a fabulous food court where you can enjoy street food from all over the Asian region.
Yeah, so Crockford is part of Genting Group, and then Conrad and Hilton.
Is it Genting or Genting?
Genting, I don't know.
know.
You know what I'm talking about.
Well, I just want to know. I want to make sure.
But yeah, back to Strad real quick. So we did the rides on top. We did the package that included the 3 main rides: Insanity, Extreme, and Big Shot.
We have our favorites.
We started with Insanity, which is the God, how to describe that?
That's like a spinning suspended carousel type thing, except the seats face inward.
But
so when they sway out with centripetal force, you're facing down.
So you face down.
Horrible.
About how many feet is the Strat?
We're like 900 feet up.
Very intense. Holy shit, that ride's very intense.
330 meters.
It is intense. It is dizzying, and it's very, very far up. It's definitely the sketchiest of them all. Like, well, not sketchy as in like it's not safe, but it feels the most intimidating.
You're just sitting on like it's very windseekery, like for me. Except worse, like it
is also very windy. None of the other ones are that windy.
And you're definitely the seat that you're in is very. It's safe and it's sturdy, but it's very low profile. And you just look right over like the side and the ground is like and it's just nothing. Like it's
there's very much like a fluoroscope situation, except for there's no track below you, and there's like you're just kind of the moment you look to the side, you're staring
minimalist,
hundreds of thousands or thousands of feet down.
Configuration it's really effective, but it's too scary.
Yeah, so that was my favorite, Insanity. Then we rode Extreme, which is kind of like a seesaw kind of ride, where you would.
Knott's Farm used to have a tiny one.
Yeah, called the Great Skate. You would go, up a little bit, and then, and it would drop, or you would just like go on a ramp straight down off the tower, and then it would just stop at the end of it and like swing you back up. When you sit in the front row, which we were like the only people riding it,
we got lucky.
You get really far off the tracks. Like the track just disappears below, and you hang a couple
wheel assemblies
100 feet over the people,
pretty far back on the vehicle. So when you're in the front car, you're like on the nose of the vehicle, and it's completely suspended over the track when you're sitting in the front. So you feel like you've completely overshot the ride itself when you're in the front because of how far you're positioned. But again, because you're sitting on like a vehicle, it was a little more comfortable for me.
Honestly, it really wasn't that scary. It was fun, but Insanity was definitely
it was forceful.
The lingering,
the magnetic brakes on that thing are interesting. So you definitely get a lot of like strong G-forces as you roll and catch yourself, and then roll and catch, and so on.
And then we obviously did Big Shot, which is a couple floors up. It's located on the very top of the tower, almost serving like a little satellite, antenna thing.
Radio tower.
No. Alex loves the ride.
Yeah.
I thought it was whatever.
It was rough for you.
It was rough. I don't say it was really rough. Like I smacked my shoulders on it. It just ran like an old SNS. Shut and drop.
It's a bit weathered. Being up there is probably.
It's very
like
it's very it's very like I'm standing in the middle of the desert and never ever has seen any shade. Honestly, I really wasn't a big fan. I got the cool view because luckily I got to have the strip view.
They needed to balance the ride. I mean, there was nobody up there. There was a couple of people riding Insanity with us, but for Extreme and Big Shot, we were the only ones. And for balancing Big Shot, I sat on the downtown Vegas side, and Sean sat on the Strip side. And maybe that had something to do with it, because Sean, you said your ride was kind of bumpy.
It was very bumpy.
And I've had rides on Sean, like when you were describing your ride, I knew exactly what you meant, because that was how I
had
felt.
it before, because I had it, oh god, which one was it? I think it was the one at Fiesta, Texas that rode like that.
Yeah.
But I rode it back in like 2016. Last time we were there, we didn't even ride Scream at Fiesta, Texas, because I remember like my first ride on it, kind of like Big Shot. Very rattly, very like, it was just uncomfortable.
When I rode the Detonator at Worlds of Fun in 2009, Detonator was that was the very first like dual tower space shot type thing, and it just felt like when I rode it, it felt older than it.
And while it's really cool that you're so high up there, not to flex, it still wasn't quite as impressive of being on the top of the Canton Tower, because the Canton Tower in Guangzhou has an Intamin drop ride on top, which is by far the
Intamin second gen
tallest ride ever, because the Canton Tower used to be for like many years too.
Yeah, Canton Tower is still the fourth tallest freestanding structure
in the whole world. And it's so incredibly tall that like on the antenna is a drop ride, and so you are so incredibly far above this Chinese city. It's a little more impressive, and it was also I guess a little more like freeing, because like when you're really up there, you look down and you see the city.
It's still the tallest outdoor observation deck in the world, if I'm not mistaken. They still have one of their records.
So, Big Shot, I like the view, but honestly, next time I'll go back. If I would do the rides, because they were a little pricey and I enjoyed them, but I didn't love them. I did love Insanity, though, so I would pay for that.
Sean will ride Insanity while I ride Big Shot.
Yeah, that sounds like a plan.
And then we'll reconvene.
And have some drinks. Cool.
Yeah.
So we did that. Obviously went to Cosmopolitan. We had wanted to do the Chandelier Bar for a while. Because
that morning we went to Egg Slut for breakfast. And Egg Slut is a
egg restaurant.
I believe it's
Is Korean.
it Korean? Yeah. Because they have a lot of locations in Seoul. There's, I believe, one in Singapore, in the
Tokyo,
Resorts World area. There's
New York, Los Angeles.
There isn't one in New York. They had a
that's a pop-up store. That's right.
But they don't have a permanent one. They're all in California. And then the Vegas one.
Reminds me of Paris Baguette, the Korean restaurant, the Korean bakery.
Totally.
Egg Slut's it's an ultra modern, small menu, egg-based restaurant. Their biggest seller is the Egg Slut, which is a whipped potato mash and
a poached egg
inside, and you are supposed to mix that.
Yeah, and they give you fresh baked bread.
To dip it in.
For dip. It was fabulous.
That was really good. And then we had some sandwiches. I forgot the names of the ones we had, but mine. We were all on brioche buns, if I'm not mistaken. But that was really good.
And it's one of those places like there's a lot of options in Vegas when you eat. So when you stumble on something that has like a giant line, like there's a culture surrounding it, like you're in for something special. So we showed up there for breakfast, and there was a line out the door around the corner. For Egg Sluts, so it was like definitely something we were like, okay, like this is definitely, there's a big hype here, like let's see how they do, and it was great. I would love to eat there again.
Yeah, I would do that too.
And then of course, so right next to Egg Slut is like the signature Cosmopolitan experience, the 3-story Chandelier Bar.
So we had walked by the Chandelier Bar forever, and because we've been to Vegas so many times, and we never really stopped there. It was always kind of one of those things where oh yeah, next time we'll do that, because we wanted to do it, and we never actually did it. And so on the trip we also had some phenomenal vegan food at Caesar's Palace.
Oh yes.
But this was another thing that we really wanted to hit.
Look up the name of that restaurant.
And so we spent the second evening we were there at the Chandelier Bar. So my dad, Alex, and I, we all went down to Cosmo from a room. And we just had a couple of signature drinks, then we just started having shots, and it was honestly a really fun time. It was kind of catching up, because we hadn't seen our dad in 2 years because of the pandemic, and we have moved, and it was just, a lot going on. And so it was really good to just have an evening, and we went to the Chandelier Bar. The service was awesome. Drinks were awesome. We were a little underdressed because we were just, being tourists, and but there was, I guess, some sort of convention going on, and there were so many people in their suits. So the vegan place we went to over at the Shops at Caesar, or the Forum Shops, was True Food Kitchen, which is a not vegan restaurant actually. They also have serve other organic foods, but they have a very big vegan focus.
But yeah, if you search
there was lots of vegan options
on Yelp. If you search for vegan restaurants, True Food comes up because so many of the reviews, the way the algorithm works, it's like, well, so many reviews mention good vegan food that then it gets
pushed to the top.
Yeah, it gets pushed to the top of the. And I believe, True Food is a chain, so it was a new experience for us on our Vegas visit. But there's locations across the country, so there's a possibility you may have a True Food vegan, or well, I guess it's not vegan. I keep wanting to call it True Food Vegan Kitchen, but it's pure incidental. We just love that it has so many vegan options. There might be a True Food Kitchen near you. Apparently there's even one in Florida. There's a few in Florida. There's one in Tampa. We should go. It's opening in 2022. Okay, this is a growing brand. It's very exciting.
Little live research here.
But yeah, the Vegas one had a great location, great aesthetic. It was very, very pleasant. A little pricey, but you know what? It's one of those like you get what you pay for things. We also got cocktails and stuff. It was like just a really, really enjoyable experience.
And then next, we went back to Valencia, and we...
Wait, did you finish talking about Chandelier Bar already?
Yeah, we did.
Okay. Well, I didn't want to cut. I felt like I cut you. Well, I didn't want to cut you off. I wasn't sure if you had finished. Like,
yes, no. There's only so much you can say about like a nice.
We got some really great drinks there.
That's what I said.
Really, really great.
And then we went to shots.
Yeah.
Okay. And so obviously we went back to Magic Mountain because we haven't been since the early 2020 because of the pandemic. We especially once we moved super late 2018. We went regularly, like every few months we were definitely at Magic Mountain, but we hadn't been since early 2020. So it's good to be back. The cool thing is that the new housing development behind the park that everyone's been dreading for years, it does give really, really cool views. So we were able to kind of explore Magic Mountain from like all around. We got to see X2 and Viper from the backside. And even though I'd seen it before from like West Ranch High School, like whatever, from higher up in the hills from when I lived there, this was the first time you can get that close from the backside without being, there for some media thing. So that was really, really cool.
And you also pointed out, I hadn't really put two and two together, but really the area that this whole complex, like that borders Magic Mountain, like up to the property line, is actually going to be a lot of mixed retail space. So I think the fears, a lot of people have asked us, and probably others related to the Magic Mountain situation, is like, is the park going to have to adjust their hours once they, are they going to need to accommodate? Basically?
I mean, it's going to be like a Knott's Bear Farm situation. Park is there first. I mean, they have been building homes close and close to the park for years, and there's, Superman that you can hear through the entire valley. So
I just think the retail space that like shares the closest border to Magic Mountain is really useful as a sound barrier.
Also, the homes are located above the park, so like a lot of the sound just kind of like bounces off and will like shoot over the park. There's really, shoot over the houses. I don't think when we stood there in Outer Batch running, we were taking pictures. It really wasn't that loud. We were standing like on the sidewalk that touched the park.
Yeah.
So honestly, there are parts of Valencia where the rides seem louder than than it seemed from the home.
Yeah, if you hit one of those gas stations that's like below the elevation of the park, like as you're coming in on Magic Mountain Parkway, like feels like you can hear everything. You can hear X2 like shuffling along and Superman.
Yeah,
obviously.
Riddler especially.
Yeah, Riddler. Oh yeah, Riddler.
Riddler is the loud one. One of the things that was really noticeable to us, first of all, we were glad we got a bunch of night rides in because it was Fright Fest. Even though it was a Thursday night, they were open till 11, so we definitely got a fair share of night rides in. Another thing that was really cool is that after just like almost 2 years, like a year and a half, you really started appreciating rides that maybe you had forgotten you appreciated. One of those rides was definitely Scream. I thought Scream was like running really well, and I was like, God, I kind of forgot. This park says so many good things. The Scream is always the one ride that people forget about, or it just doesn't live up to the hype to all the other record breakers because it's just another Florida coaster. But really, it's just a solid attraction, and I always felt like if it's in a different park, it would do so much better. It could be the Medusa.
I feel like everybody says that. They're like, gosh, if this ride was at Valley Fair, or just insert random park here.
It's true though, because at Magic Mountain it gets overshadowed by like mega loopers like Viper, Riddler. There's the X2 Tetsu. There's just massive other coasters.
Viper, despite being so much older than Scream, really still is like the mega looper of the park.
I guess it is because it's so tall and it's on the hill and it's still like taller. Twisted Colossus was disappointing. No racing. They weren't staffed enough, so it was just one of those things where like even if people tried, they just couldn't get the train out. It really sucked.
Man, I used to really like Twisted Colossus. That was my first RMC.
That used to be our favorite RMC.
That was the first roller coaster we rode together.
That is actually funny enough because it's not really RMC.
It was almost exactly 5 years since we had met each other.
It was like one day after.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was literally one day after
the
5
week
year
before
anniversary.
Halloween. We met the week before Halloween at Magic Mountain in 2016, and here we are at Magic Mountain.
Like 5 years and 1 day later.
Yeah. A week before Halloween. But yeah, I don't know what to say about Twisted Colossus anymore. Like, I used to be so into that ride, because when you got a racing ride, it was like magical. But
Magical?
Magic.
Wow. Magic on the mountain.
It was amazing. It was like, it gave me like Dueling Dragons level flashbacks when it was actually dueling, and that's just not a reality that they have with that ride anymore. And I feel like the solution to that problem is just like to let it go and build West Coast Racers, which I enjoyed our West Coast Racer rides immensely on this visit. It's only the second time that we've ridden it, or the second visit that we've been and ridden it, and I think that ride is just so on point. And my only complaint is that I feel like the height requirement is too high. I feel like it gives me a 48-inch height requirement vibe, even though it's a 54-inch height requirement. I feel like when I was a kid, and when I was like 7 or 8 years old, and like could only ride the 54-inch height requirement rides, I feel like, or 48-inch height requirement rides, I feel like that would have been like a perfect like 48-incher type ride. But you know, the manufacturing specifications are what they are. But anyways, like that, our rides on West Coast Racers satisfied what Twisted Colossus was not able to satisfy for us, which was like great racing experience. I just love the figure 8 over the go-kart track so much. That is an engineering marvel.
Yeah, the figure 8 really is super underrated. Okay, here's the thing. West Coast Racers and its infinite delays, the first year was meant to be open, led to it opening literally about... It literally opened pretty much the week that like all travel from China was banned. So like the pandemic really started picking up steam, and like within 6 weeks of it opening, parks were announcing their closures for the pandemic. And so it was one of those things where the ride came out and only a few media people got to ride it, and then a few pass holders and a few regular off-season guests, and boom, the parks were closed, and Magic Mountain didn't reopen with rides literally for like over a year since then. So it was one of the situations where this ride just kind of got delayed, people kind of forgot about it, came out, and just when the spark could hit again, pandemic just ruined all of that. And so there's not a lot of talk about West Coast Racers, but I want to say that I think it is a perfect fit for the park, despite it looking on paper kind of like a launch Twisted Colossus. First of all, you have guaranteed racing, which is nice. Second of all, it is a smaller launched looper in a way that it feels very, like, laterally it does a lot of movements. It feels very snappy. I call it the new generation of Cup Car Chase.
Yeah.
You know, like two racing vehicles in a very twisty layout with a couple of inversions.
Something about it
very
feels
good.
So retro in the way that it's not super inversion heavy. It's very lateral focused. It's very positive G focused, but there's great moments of airtime.
And it owns the area. The nice thing about this is they designate an area to be like the streets of LA, kind of like street culture.
Yeah.
Even the bricks they use are like everyone's backyard.
Yeah.
And so it was really, really clever. And it really has a presence because you cannot enter the area without passing underneath its really beefy double track thick tube superstructure, because the ride really shares one superstructure for both tracks. So like there's I would say the majority of the ride is shared supports, like both tracks attached to one beam. Yeah. And that's really, really fascinating because the superstructure is really, really beefy. In fact, the figure 8 we just mentioned suspends over the ride over the park's go-karts. Which, I mean, I've never seen a park put that much effort into, protecting a go-kart.
But it works so well.
But it works with the racing theme.
If there was ever a time to keep your go-karts, it would be this time with this go-kart track in this area for this park, because it's so strong.
Yeah, and the underground is it has taco places. It's just like nice to have life breathe back into the side of the park. People go over there now with a purpose, and it isn't the area you stroll into at the end of the day. Oh shit, there's more stuff here.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
I guess literally how it is, and I think it's clever that they pushed they greenlit this project in 2017 or 18. I think it was closer to like early 2018, and announced it later in 2018 because all the housing developments were like greenlit, and they were like the grounds were being leveled, and so the park was like, we need to put stuff on this side of the park now before the homes are being lived in. That's the same reason Wonder Woman's opening. Yeah, all the stuff is in the back of the park. If you're starting to notice, all the investments are back there. Tatsu's bright new color scheme. Yeah, it's all facing that side where the houses are going to be. So when people live there, it's like, well, the noise is already there. The coaster's already there. We didn't just build a new coaster and polluted your noise more. It was already there.
Yeah, if anybody's wondering why there's this trend of like everything that Magic Mountain is investing in being in that like back walk area, like everything from the
Metropolis, Battlefront Metropolis,
all the enhancements for the DC comic books area, like all of that is related to its proximity to the construction, so that area is going to be
I think we'll finally see more stuff on the front side once the back is a little more packed, and so that way, you know, where the houses are, it's smart to have everything standing before people live there. So that is a really nice area. I mean, speaking of the area, Apocalypse, I think fits well in there. Kind of like
works really well.
Kind of like the dusty backlot kind of vibe that half of LA gives off.
It feels like one of those like pull apart junkyards. Like you go in there if you've got your like whatever your shitbox beater car. You go in there like with all the other abandoned vehicles. And
it's funny because like the ride's always really worked in the setting because it's Valencia is in the high desert in the mountains, so like it's always really dry most of the year, and it obviously that works really well for the LA theme that they chose for the area. But now it works even better. I feel like the underground's like vibe that they're going for really lends itself to kind of like the junkyard vibe that Apocalypse gives up, despite being not necessarily themed to a junkyard exactly. Because before it was like an old harbor that was dilapidated.
Yeah.
There used to be like
the
something
Cyclone Bay area, which
and then Apocalypse was such a weird vibe because like the only reason it looks similar is because one is themed to being old and abandoned and one is literally old and abandoned.
Yeah.
But now it's like it really works together. And the cool thing about the queue for Apocalypse is West Coast Racers goes over it and goes past it, so you really get to enjoy kind of some interaction there. And Apocalypse was running really well. It really was. We hadn't ridden it a whole lot the last couple of years because of its downtime right before we moved. But honestly, I haven't ridden so many GCIs. It was running like I want a GCI to run, and I think I appreciate the layout a little more than I did before.
It's a very satisfying wooden coaster. It's like the wooden coaster experience that Magic Mountain deserves and has tried multiple times to achieve. And even my first rides on Apocalypse were enjoyable, but I feel like it was suffering from pacing issues. If that ride isn't maintaining its speed throughout, then the second half can feel kind of sluggish. But this time around, I mean, I got my best rides I've ever had on Apocalypse this time around.
I guess I rode it just after the retrack in 2017 when they retracked most of it by some third party, and it ran really well. But another thing I want to mention is, we kind of said that Apocalypse, now we've ridden so many GCIs, so many wooden coasters, and it's been like two or 3 years, not probably 2 years since you've ridden it. It kind of stood out like, okay, this ride really does something a little bit different, and it really works as a Woody. It's not just, another GCI or a smaller GCI. The same I felt for Goliath. We had been saying this for a while now. We really are like Goliath and Titan defenders.
Or Goliath truthers. We're Giovanella
truthers. But now it really more than ever, I was like, you know what, this ride is just something different. It's not meant to be a hypercoaster from B&M. And especially when this ride came out, it was one of the very first. I mean, it came out before Millennium 4, so like the standards of a modern twister / hypercoaster hadn't been set. So like, the industry didn't go in the direction Goliath went. But there's this like overarching theme of enthusiasts in California. Goliath is like has no airtime and it's like not a worthy hyper. But then when you ride these like B&Ms, honestly they all run together. There's like no joy in riding the different ones because like they're marginally better or worse or marginally different. And I feel like Goliath feels so different. The positive G's, the twistiness, the massive sloped drop. I really appreciated how like not a B&M it was for a second.
Yeah, I was thinking about that today, actually, when I was reviewing our most recent Little Magic Mountain article in preparation for this.
On thecoasterkings.com.
Yeah. And I was thinking, I'm like, airtime-based hypers are a dime a dozen, and I think for most parks, I would say that an airtime-based hyper is the right choice. But
I'm not saying it's not the right choice. Right. I'm just saying if you travel, it starts running together, and so Goliath is such a refreshing, different approach to the same idea of like height and speed.
It's coming home to Goliath. I guess for us in the figurative sense, for other people in the literal sense. I don't know. You could travel to like the Northeast and find a lot of good hypers, airtime focused hypercoasters that set out to achieve the same or similar things. Especially now, I mean, even like it's so amazing to me when you go like Hershey Park. Not only do they have 2 hypercoasters, but Candemonium is very much like a little abridged Nitro. The parks are not that far from each other. It's amazing how many hypercoasters you can find in such a small area, and they all have a similar sort of approach to the concept. Like Six Flags New England's Superman is again a great ride. There's great hypers everywhere. Dorney's hyper is great. Like different manufacturers, different eras, different periods. Skyrush, of course, is an acquired taste and a bit more on the Goliath end of the spectrum when it comes to forces, but still very airtime focused. Phantom's Revenge isn't that far even Six Flags America's Superman is in that mix too. There's definitely places you can go in the world where you find a lot of hypercoasters that accomplish a lot of the same things, and the variance between them is marginal. And then you go and ride Goliath, and it makes you appreciate the ways in which Goliath is so different. Everything about it. For a coaster enthusiast, you ride a few hypers around and start surveying. And you ride Goliath, and Titan for that matter, you ride something and you're like, okay, this is really unusual. Especially with the untimely demise of Giovanella, shot down in their prime. They had so much potential. They could have done so many cool things, but they were...
riding Goliath and Titan, those are two rides that, we have easy access to. Giovanella rides. There's still Anaconda in South Africa, but I don't know if I'll ever ride that. So one of the things is that they are over 20 years old, and they run so well. It is unbelievable that these rides came out in the same year that some other rides came out, and then like the way they've aged. Perhaps they were over-engineered. I mean, they're very well supported. But oh my god, there's not a bump in the track to be found. The rolling stock is super solid. I feel like Goliath runs so much better than like some B&Ms that are literally like 10 years younger.
But Goliath runs better than every B&M in the state of Ohio. And
that is not a lie.
And Goliath is substantially older.
So that's something that I feel like that their ride really deserves a shout out.
Like I really don't have patience like for rides like Diamondback at Kings Island, where like the vibration is so noticeable, the shuffling, and I'm like, I get that for the average patron, it's not a problem, but I also feel like it just shouldn't be. There just isn't an excuse for a ride to run like that. And sometimes I think, well, maybe I'm just being nitpicky, but then I ride a ride like Goliath, and I'm like, no, like, there's no excuse for a ride to run the way that Diamondback runs when you have a ride like Goliath that runs absolutely without flaws.
It's funny because this makes you think of Riddler, which we also are big fans of.
Speaking of flawless.
It runs so well. I mean, obviously stand-ups don't have a good reputation, whether we're talking Togo, whether we're talking Intamin, whether we're talking B&M. And I get that. I have ridden plenty of these, and generally speaking, I'm not like thrilled by them, like excited. Sometimes I'm really scared, like on the Togo ones. But generally speaking, there's only one I really love. Like, I like Georgia Scorcher, but it's just kind of small. Like, it's kind of, to me, that's kind of Vortex/Patriots, bigger version.
And like we love Green Lantern at Great Adventure. Like, that's one of our favorite rides at Great Adventure. But then there's...
I like it, but then there's like the
Riddler's Revenge, which is not just good for a stand-up coaster, it is one of B&M's best coasters.
And as I wrote in the show notes, Riddler is Bay for literally ever.
Forever, yeah. Oh yeah, he did write that. In fact, I would say that like when Riddler opened, it was easily the best roller coaster they had ever built at the time.
B&M?
That might be a...
I mean, think about it, 1998.
Yeah, 1998.
The fact that it's older than freaking Goliath.
I feel like, because there's definitely B&Ms now that people would say are like the best B&M ever rides. Fury, even like stuff that came right after Riddler, like Apollo's Chariot. But I struggle to think of a B&M that I like better.
Riddler has such a phenomenal layout. Such an incredibly phenomenal layout. Pacing is very strong. Honestly, tracks really well. It runs well. I almost have a hard time of like giving all the reasons why I love it, because there really aren't that many. It's just a solid attraction. I love riding it. The first drop is very solid. It is a large coaster. It is the tallest B&M drop in the park because Tatsu, despite its height, it doesn't really have a lot of big drops because it's just on the mountain.
It held the vertical loop height record for a while. Like, it was literally the tallest vertical loop in the world.
The way the loop wraps around the lift, obviously we ride Kumba a lot now, and it was fun riding Riddler again and being like, Riddler is like the way bigger, bossier version of Kumba with the stand-up trains. And honestly, the stand-up trains are not that much of a distractor for me at all. I really don't mind them, especially because the ride runs well. Like, I've been on stand-ups with the same trains or slightly different trains that don't track well, and yes, then the stand-up trains are absolutely miserable. Sorry for all your parts. But on Riddler, I've historically had really good rides on Riddler. I never really remember a ride where like Riddler was really that bad. Maybe like once or twice where I hit my head on the restraint and some inversion. But other than that, it's always been a really solid stand-up, really solid looper in general, and as I grow more towards the 90 loopers, the more I feel like Riddler is like king.
And this ride is just like big dick energy for me. Like, you come off that, it is massive, it's almost hypercoaster proportions.
It sounds intimidating. Sometimes you're in the parking lot and you think it's Superman, but it's actually Riddler running because it's so loud.
This thing is is tremendous, beautifully landscaped, fabulous positioning within the park. In its day, when it was new, it did a great job of accommodating existing rides around it.
Like Tidal Wave.
I really missed Tidal Wave and Free Fall being
It's sad because now Tidal Wave is gone, and you're like, wow.
Yeah.
Like, it's a support structure for Riddler. The whole ride, obviously, was built around and over those two. And now with Tidal Wave gone, it feels like Riddler is kind of missing the last bit of its original identity.
My heart was broken when, even though it was inevitable that Free Fall was going to be demolished, in my mind. Free Fall, with the paint job that it got to like accommodate the Riddler theme, I mean, that ride looked better and looked more relevant than it ever had in its entire existence when Riddler's Revenge opened. The Free Fall was 15 years old and was out here.
Honestly,
like,
when we talk about Riddler like that, how it impressed the surrounding area. I mean, the same with the way that the monorail used to run through Riddler's plot.
Yeah. It used to go right next to Riddler.
It's funny because now I'm thinking of West Coast Racers, not to draw a weird parallel there, but West Coast Racer kind of has the same presence on the area.
Yeah.
The area used to be something, and there's pre-existing things that have been there, that are there. Jetstream, the go-karts, some of the restaurants, Apocalypse, even the Maze, Aftermath 2, the Candy Kitchen, all of it.
1977.
But yet they're all brought together and they're like in a way more positive light than the West Coast Racing because it kind of swirls around them. You know what I'm saying? It's funny how that works.
Yeah,
Speaking of like classics in the parks, they turned Superman Escape from Krypton one side back forward, so you would launch forward and then drop backwards. Which is supposed to only running on weekdays.
I'm sorry.
Fun shit. We show up on a weekday and it's not even open.
I'm reading your notes. Oh my god! When did you write these? What kind of?
I literally submitted these to you like months ago.
Look,
weeks ago.
I'm sorry. The headspace that you were in, X2 is still that bitch. He has written. I love it. I love you, Dave.
Well, we have to have show notes, so our shows are a little more guided. That's the goal of this season.
I like your voice here in these in the notes here. But before we move on to X2 being that bitch, I look forward to writing Superman.
Yeah, if you read our article, I wrote in there. Oh yeah, we'll write it forwards in a couple of weeks. Yeah. But then we decided to go to Paris. So we actually didn't go back to maybe January.
Yeah, maybe January. That would be a fun way to kick off the calendar year. I look forward to writing. I think Escape from Krypton. I think Superman backwards is still the better experience because the first time I wrote it backward, I was like, wait a minute, this is really cool. Like, this is how it always should have been. But writing it forward again for like the nostalgia factor for me.
I always liked the drop backwards. Really fun.
Yeah, the drop backwards.
I always liked falling out of the sky and was like a giant
like seeing the ride, coming up to it, taking off and watching the tower get closer and closer.
The one thing I have heard from a lot of people is the ride feels much faster when you take off forward. Yeah. If you take off backwards, there's no wind in your face.
Yeah.
You notice it when you slow down at the end, like when you come back down the tower, there's like, your face is flapping, Stratocoasters and stuff. But it'll be fun again to ride it forwards and having that like sense of speed again because it's a 6-second launch.
I think
it's not fast. It's
like
not fast acceleration.
10 years. The ride had been open for a little over 10 years when they did the Escape from the ride had been open for almost 15 years, I guess, when they did Escape from Krypton, and now it's been another 10 years, and they've turned one side around to give you both options, and I just think that's really smart. I feel like this ride is remaining relevant in unexpected ways, and Magic Mountain keeps getting mileage out of it. It's funny to think how like Superman on one hand you have Superman, which is like finding unlikely ways to remain on everybody's minds. It's still being talked about. It's 25 years old now, and then you have like Top Thrill Dragster on the other end, which like we're not even being told like what to expect next year from Top Thrill Dragster based on like the recent circumstances with that ride's operation. It's just funny to think how like Dragster, which was like the better, improved, newer version that for a long time people talked about Superman being like the inferior prototype stepping stone to a ride like Top Thrill Dragster, and now looking at them right now in this particular notch on the timeline, it's just kind of ironic to me. Superman, you have like a consistent, likable ride that is still drawing attention to itself on social media and stuff, and then you have Dragster, which is like sent someone to the hospital. It's just unfortunate, but it's just like, it's also just odd. It's just funny. I never would have guessed that like these two rides would be where they are in 2021 going into 2022, where one of them is like really flourishing and time again proving that it's an excellent member of Magic Mountain's superb ride arsenal, and then you have Top Thrill Dragster, which is so problematic and has been so problematic for its entire existence that the lingering rumor that
Superman's had its fair share.
Oh, sure. But I don't think there's any truth to the rumor that Dragster is going to be retired. I don't think that's happening, but people keep talking about it. The lingering rumor that the ride's going to be retired is unrelenting because the problems are so
who knows? Maybe they'll bring in
plentiful.
Intamin and they'll install like a new age LAM system like they have on Red Force.
Yeah.
And before you know it, Top Thrill Dragster will just be a electrically launched mechanically launched coaster.
I heard that again, this is all hearsay, but I've heard people say that like Intamin has been consulted more than once with like how to approach the future of Dragster and making it safer and more reliable. And they just have been told pretty flatly that it's not possible with the technology they have right now for Dragster to complete its layout with a launch system that does not utilize the flywheel. How true that is, I'm not sure.
I mean, we'll see.
But it kind of makes sense when you consider Red Force. Isn't the launch for Red Force, like, doesn't that ride have, like, a footprint that's roughly the same size as Dragster, but it's like a full 100 feet shorter?
I don't exactly know.
We'll look into it. Anyways, I digress.
It's also already like 5 years older, though.
Yeah.
Even Mac, who historically has never had a good launch, and now fires shit off
coaster.
like Hurricane and Sucho.
Oh my god,
so,
can't wait.
Anyway, different story. X2.
That bitch.
Still running great, still very intimidating, still very intense, still a headbanger. Unfortunately, the audio wasn't working, but the fire was
working.
Which I will take.
Awesome.
I will take both flamethrowers
over
still working
audio.
like 13 years after the relaunch.
Especially if you're going to photograph it. If you're going to park on the side of the road like we did right before our flight. And
yes, thecoastgames.com/magic-mountain-fall-2021. Boom, a bunch of pictures of that
it's
action.
that web URL for me.
I know, nobody's going to look it up.
That's okay.
Right next door, Viper. Viper is Bay. Unfortunately, Viper was struck by an incident in 2018 that for the last 3 months of us living there, the girl was down.
Yeah.
Very unfortunate because that was our go-to. We would ride it weekly, time after time after time. And then in 2020, the unfortunate event happened so we rode a couple times in 2019, luckily.
Yeah.
But then the unfortunate event happened in early 2020 that we went, and then
we were out there to visit.
And so it was running all day. We're like, okay, great, we'll hop on in a minute. We have some stuff that has longer lines to get on first. And like midway through the day, it closed down for some like social media filming thing they were doing.
Closed to the public. And
with
we're
some
like
celebrities.
Bastards.
And then so it was running, but only with celebrities and cameras. And that really sucked because we didn't get on. And then we flew home. We're like, for a second, we're going to extend our trip by day, just get on Viper. And then we're like, no, we'll just come back next month. And then the pandemic happened, and then we didn't come back till this year.
Friendly reminder that Viper is still Hollywood's favorite coaster. I wrote a little article about that. Because
search Viper's Hollywood's favorite coasters on Google, and you'll find this.
It's like from the time that ride has opened until to this day, to this day, that ride, the camera mount has made that ride a celebrity. Everyone has seen Viper in some piece of media, whether it's Encino Man, or the episode of Senior Ditch Day for Glee, or, that episode of Lucifer, where the ride was like, most of those movies and TV shows, it's like given a theme or like a different like aesthetic or like, it's unrelated to Magic Mountain. But I love that in the episode of Lucifer, where they go ride it, they're canonically at Magic Mountain riding
following
Viper.
the ride's layout and everything.
Like that's really fun to me. Like that was a great moment for Magic Mountain to like remind people like that this coaster is still.
We also love that Magic Mountain still loves Viper that much. First of all, they installed an incredibly expensive panel system in 2018, so like that ride got quite the investments.
Remember when Yellow Train got that huge refurb in 2017, and when they brought it back online, it was like news.
And they still have all 4 trains for it, and the ride is just loved. Like it's on all this merchandise. It's a good coaster that has a bunch of its own personal merch. It has giant frames for it. So
it may not have a very long line, but it's really the ride is super reliable, and it has great capacity.
The maintenance cost isn't that crazy.
And it's not a ride that like is going to collect a long queue because it just eats people.
Well, yeah, because
even
when it runs one train, it'll dispatch twice when X2 runs one train, which is really aggravating because they have the same capacity, but X2 will take so much longer to get on.
Few coasters in Magic Mountain can process that number of people, whether it's because, like, even our favorites, like Riddler, it takes a minute to dispatch because of the
Tatoo's a flying coaster. Scream has really good capacity if they run multiple trains, so it's not a reason
Scream is another ride that, like, never has a line because it can really process people, but Viper is, like, no fuss. You get on, no issues with like the vehicle's peripherals or like the station having to drop the floor or whatever. Like that ride is just easy peasy, runs like a workhorse, like serious.
She's easy breezy, beautiful, cover girl.
Easy breezy, beautiful Viper forever.
Speaking of beautiful, what do you think of Tatsu's new paint scheme?
Well,
do you think it's beautiful?
I love it, but I would also
Is she born with it? No, she's not actually.
Yeah.
Maybe it's
the pictures that I'm seeing of like the wave turn and stuff with the completed color scheme, I'm actually really digging it.
Yes,
because it's so unexpected, really unexpected, really different.
People always wanted that green because they never got the green dragon train that was like promised in the promos.
Yeah.
However, we have known for like years now what Coasters Through the Clouds at Nanchang Sunek Land looks like in China, and it's massive superstructure of green supports, and it's like snaking orange track going through that. It has always been like a vibe. I wasn't sure if Magic was a place for that vibe, but now I'm seeing it come together. I'm on board.
And I think Tatsu looks even better because the beefiness of the B&M track really lends itself to
it feels more balanced.
Yeah.
For a second I was afraid of because if you look at Tatsu from a distance, it supports, it's an ocean support. This thing just floats over the park. And it's all heavy, thick supports, but the track itself is pretty thick too, so now seeing it kind of come together, especially in the moments where it's closer to the ground, so like the horseshoe, there's not as many supports because the track's on the outside and it's closer to the ground. There's a really nice balance. The green is not overpowering. Will the green still be overpowering at the end? Yes, it will, but I'm not mad about it. Does that make sense?
Also, it reminds us of the Doll and Dragon paint job, the dueling sit-down inverted Intamin Blitz coaster at Guangzhou Sunak, which you walk up to that thing, it doesn't photograph as well as it looks because you look at it and you think like, oh my god, it's like Christmas colors, and there's like multiple shades of green and red.
But you don't really realize that until you're
kind of
close,
like
though.
Entering orange territory. But then you look at it and you're like, you know what? Aside from the pre-existing social implications of what red and green should mean, it looks dope. It looks awesome, and so Tatsu is giving me like fabulous neo-Chinese roller coaster boom vibes. It's giving me, massive B&M realness a la the flying coasters and wing coasters and dive coasters of China, and then the colors are just fabulous, unexpected, bold, runway ready color schemes. So
another good. Magic Mountain used to have a lot of rides in the similar color scheme vibes, and now it's really diversifying to the point where every ride really has its own scheme. I like that.
It's the sequel of the Riddler's Revenge repaint, where like once we realized it was yellow supports with green track, and we were like, "Oh, is that gonna work?" And then it works.
Little fun fact is that every coaster currently operating in Magic Mountain, except for Ninja and Viper, and
Gold Rusher.
No, Gold Rusher's been repainted.
Oh, has it?
Babe, it opened red.
Well, oh yeah, that's right. I thought you meant like recently, but oh yeah, that's true. That's true.
So besides Viper and Ninja and perhaps like 2 or 3 Kitty coasters, because one is brand new.
Yeah.
Have never been so besides those rides, everything has been repainted in different color at some point. X2 went through a major color change. Tetsu's going through a major color change.
Everything that's like older.
Riddler, Scream, Goliath, Twisted Colossus.
Because obviously,
obviously
Full
stuff that's
Throttle,
like 5
Twisted
years old
Colossus and West Coast Racers.
But I'm talking about rides that have been around for over a decade.
But even right, Scream and Tatsu and like stuff that have been that opened in like the 2000s. Everything that Magic Mountain has built in the 2000s.
So it's kind of fun seeing how like the colors have all kind of changed. Yeah. The whole Magic Mountain is a lot more of a colorful vibe now, and it used to be a lot darker. The evolution
of the park's aesthetic is like bright, eye-catching, like color potpourri.
Speaking of evolution, what do you think of Tatsu now we've ridden Fly, the evolution of the flying coaster? Is Tatsu still that big bad boss, right underneath flying dinosaur? Or is it now just kind of pushed back a little bit? How we feel about this?
So, my opinion of Tatsu used to be that I could ride it like once, and it would be so intense, and then I was done. Like, I could not
the pretzel is very
handle the intensity of it.
But I feel like the pretzel is the only really intense part, though. The rest of the ride, and Nick Chandler, who does some stuff in Florida for us, he mentioned that too. And first I was like, really though? Because I feel like Tatsu is just like super intense flyer. But then now I understand, because now I've ridden Fly, which is really intense.
We rode Fly.
And I'm like, yeah, the pretzel is the only part where you really
2 rides on Fly was enough for me. I found it very intense. And it's not because there's any one moment on Fly that's really intense. The entire ride has a sustained level of positive G-force intensity, and the ride is lengthy. It's a long ride. Tatsu, And really, even because didn't Nick say that he thought that Manta was more intense than Tatsu?
Yeah,
and like that
tracks. Not overall intensity, but there's like more intense moments.
It
where
tracks
Tatsu has like one really intense.
Flying Dinosaur's like that too. There's not one moment on Flying Dinosaur that's as intense as the pretzel on Tatsu, but Flying Dinosaur is so swift.
Has more
intense. Has a lot of forcefulness throughout the ride. Fly is the same way. Riding Fly and then going back and riding Tatsu felt like a walk in the park. It felt pleasant, easy to tolerate, and because I guess I was so mentally prepared for the pretzel loop.
Where would you say Tatsu now ranks amongst the flyers?
I think Fly is the premium flying coaster product.
And then Flying Dinosaur.
Would I take Flying Dinosaur over Tatsu? Really hard for me to say.
It is hard because Flying Dinosaur at the end of the day is a very industrial vibe. It's pretty much like a concrete coaster. It runs over concrete. It's like there's like two interactions with the water. One at the Jurassic River Adventure.
It's really still a cool setting since USJ is
it's like
on
full
an
of
island
nets
in a bar.
But you're a flying coaster. You don't really see that though. You're mostly facing down and you just ride over the midway, which is partially cool. But I think Tatsu is flying over the mountains and being so elevated, you really are just like looking at the mountainous landscape and you're really like in your own little airspace. That's where like Flying Dinosaur is very much just kind of like making its way downtown through Jurassic Park.
Yeah,
so
I would
see
have
that
to say
point,
that
even though it does more.
Now that Tatsu's repainted, not to sound superficial, but like my biggest complaint about Tatsu was how ugly it had gotten with the fading and with the new color scheme.
That's such an expensive repaint.
Suddenly, I'm like, wait a minute, like Tatsu is like.
I honestly don't know. Maybe
looking so cool.
I
can't decide.
Flying Dinosaur has a great first drop.
It used to be.
Either way, there's a new winner.
It used to be obvious for me. Well, the one thing that there's a couple of things that Flying Dinosaur does better. Flying Dinosaur has an underground tunnel in its pretzel that the midway into Jurassic Park goes through. There's some moments, and I still like the overall pacing of Flying Dinosaur more, and I feel like it does more, but I also enjoy the varied pacing of Tatsu and how the first half of, like, everything before the pretzel feels pretty gentle. You do the two, like, corkscrew bits, the first drop is fabulous, I love the egg turn. Then that high speed, like, low turn right before the pretzel is really strong, and then, of course, the pretzel is just, like a climax in every meaning of the word. And then you get that little 0G roll as you exit out, and then the 720, or the 270 helix that echoes the fan turn on Revolution into the brakes. It's still a really satisfying ride, whereas Flying Dinosaur, I wouldn't say ends on a high note the way that Tatsu does. I would say they're so even. I would like it. You'd have to ask me
neck and neck,
depending on how I'm feeling, how I feel on that day. That's how close they are. That's how strong they are.
You know what I feel like? I feel like our listeners should be checking out thecoasterkings.com for our news articles. We've got some Disney Paris stuff going on.
Yep.
We've got a bunch of new stuff in the works. We've got Crystal Crowns coming back in article form and also in podcast form later this year. Podcast episode 1 of the season is already live. Check that out on your favorite channels. Pandora, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. Apple Podcasts, I should say. Google Podcasts. Find us on Discord, join the conversation. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, everywhere. Yep. Join us, have a conversation. We're doing interactive pieces that, there'll be some episodes really driven just by you guys and your responses. Mm-hmm. So stay tuned for more.
That's right.
And we're going to go to Disney.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.